I that is that the idea of preservation. I refer it as artificial preservation of culture that takes place when an immigrant group, when a group leaves their native home and moves to a different nation. They do an artificial preservation of that culture. And you see this sort of everywhere that has happened. Like Italians, even Nagas that move to like the States or in Canada, they sort of falsely preserve this identity of what it means to be Naga, right? Eating a certain type of food at a certain period of time. Or I think the most common one for us in Canada is the French, the Quebecois, whose language. So I've been told, I don't speak French, but so I've been told by Parisian French people that that their French sounds like crap and it's old, and they're using words that that the French in France stopped using a while ago. But in Quebec, they had everything has to be in French because they want to preserve the culture, the language, and it's the artificial preservation that's going on. And if you talk to, at least in my experience, if you talk to Canadians who are sort of taken by this idea that, oh, we have to preserve culture. And I have nothing against preserving culture. I think there are things about certain cultures that are beautiful and you can preserve it, but preserving it not to force it down other people, and preserving it not to make it not to put it up on a pedestal that nobody can use, nobody can draw from it, right? And there's another example that I'm thinking of is there's an Indian woman in BC. You'll find this funny, who's a chef, and this was a few years ago. She was very upset that people were making bone broth in a particular sub region of India where I forget how they make bone broth, but they're making bone broth soup. And she was upset that white Canadians were making bone broth soup the way that the sub-Indian culture was. And she said, this is cultural appropriation, this cannot be done, this is taking from my culture. And she, turns out, grew up here, she was born here and she grew up here, right? And she visited India, I don't know how many times. But it's like anybody else from India was like, yo, go for it. That's why in India, one of the funniest things to me is if you have a foreigner visiting India, right? Any foreigner can be white, can be black, can be blue, doesn't matter. They come to India, and if they come to a family, that embraces them. So if it's a friend that they'll shower you with. If it's a Hindu family, they'll do a whole celebration. They put the flower thing on you. They'll give you sari, like super nice sari. They might even give you some jewelry for you to wear, maybe some kurtas, all that stuff, right? And they expect these foreigners to wear it because for them, when you wear it, you're participating in the culture and you're sort of celebrating that culture. But here in Canada and the US, even, it's the opposite, right? You wear that, you're a straight up white person from somewhere in the boonies, and you wear a sari. All of a sudden, doesn't matter if your friend gave you that sari who's Indian and they expected you to wear it. All of a sudden, you're committing cultural appropriation. It's you're defacing this culture's identity. As if identity is all caught up in one particular thing, right?
Right. And I think the Steelman case for cultural appropriation is that you shouldn't be mocking other cultures. Like obviously, if you're wearing like a native headdress and you're running around with a bottle of alcohol and you're pretending to insult people and all of that, then that's extremely insulting and it is mocking. But in response to that, you should say like, "What the hell, dude? Like this isn't how you behave at all." But that's different from the idea that is put forward by the postmodernists who think that cultural appropriation is wrong. And it's sad to see. It's very ironic in that case with the Indian woman and the bone broth. She's using it as a way to preserve her own culture because that's all she thinks her culture is Indian food and maybe language. But and then with the white person who goes to India and wears a sari, it's like by holding on to your beliefs of cultural appropriation, that is you holding on to your culture and not accepting someone else's. Like it is in itself a form of culture. And so I think that it's quite arrogant and deaf and tone deaf, for sure.
And one last thing, I think the important thing to realize is culture is any culture that exists is the result of borrowing it from a different culture, right? A culture prior to it. And the one thing to remember is each household has their own culture, even if you're from a mega culture, like a bigger culture. In India, it would be very rare for you to go into one household with 6 kids, a family of 6, and then go into a different house with a family of 10, a poorer family, let's just say a poorer family somewhere in the village. Those, they have very 2 separate cultures. The uniting thing, let's say, would be their religion. But other than that, the way the way they practice certain holidays, the way they practice certain momentous days during the year, it would be very, very different. And so it baffles me that the cultural appropriation has taken such a high spot in society, and the legacy media and all the majority of progressive love to call out cultural appropriation when they see it. And I know recently they called out some woman in a music video with Nicki Minaj for pretending to be black. I don't know what that means, but she was pretending. I think she was dressing up as like someone from the like a rapper lady, with like dreads. I think she was wearing dreads, and she was being called out because she was white. And I was thinking, what are we getting to that we're calling out these tiny things? Next thing you know, we're going to be calling out people wearing pants. Like, okay, this is cultural appropriation. You can't wear pants. You can't wear high heels because the French royalty were the ones who created high heels for their.
Right.